Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Source Blitz podcast. My name is David A. Arnott, sitting here with Matthew Lutovsky. How you doing, Matt?
Doing good.
Well, we're going to be talking about the AFC North today. Those are the previews that are going up on the site, up on Fantasy Source Football. If you're not already subscribed, go do that right now. Draft kits, all that other stuff that you possibly need, sortable stats, projections, everything you could possibly want.
And our mock draft.
Oh, yeah, and our mock draft.
Which is actually a real draft for us, but it's on the site now. It went up today. George Winkler column about it. The whole thing, you can see who we picked.
Right. This I may be biased, but I think that one of the most important things that we put up there is the written content, the columns behind that paywall, and it's absolutely worth your reading. And we're going to be talking a little bit about some of those previews, the AFC North previews. You started out by writing the Cleveland Browns preview, so just give us an idea, like what's your basic assessment of them as a fantasy option this year?
Well, let me tell you, first of all, it was quite a battle to get the opportunity to write. Everyone wanted it. Yes. Everyone wanted it. No, they didn't. But I gladly accepted it because that's the beauty of fantasy football, is even the seemingly worst teams, they're important. If it's a player and he has the football in his hands, he matters.
Now, here's a question. If you're in a league where a return man is his own, like return stats are their own stats, do the Browns have one of the best players in that category?
They absolutely do. I mean, Josh Cribbs is a phenomenal return man. We all know that. But one of the things I wrote in there is, they say, oh, he's going to have a bigger role on offense. Remember how that worked out for Devin Hester? Mm-hmm. So there's I think Cribbs is kind of a popular sleeper right now, even in leagues that don't reward return yards. But I don't really know why, because we know he's a great player, he's dynamic, but he's so hit and miss.
In many ways, he's a great real-life football player, the kind of guy you want on your team because he's the best two-way special teams player. Both sides of special teams, he's the best player in the league that's not like an actual kicker or something.
Right.
And yet in fantasy, though he does pile up yards and he'll catch a pass or two every year or every week, and he might even throw a pass. Yeah. He might run once or twice. It all adds up to meh. As for now, and until he gets an actual role, he's not really worthwhile to fantasy.
Because I think I think he didn't have any games where he had more than 49 yards receiving last year and only one with more than 45 rushing. You can't count on that week to week. This guy's getting 7 touches a game.
I mean, if anything, he might be, and this just is really obscure, he might be the beneficiary of some league where they do IDP scoring and tackles and kick return yards, where for some reason the whole amalgamation adds up to more than your average defensive back would get.
Yeah.
But at that point, your lead is so intense, I'm melting right now just thinking about it.
No, but for the Browns, it's Jerome Harrison right now. Mm-hmm. A lot of people thought it'd be Hardesty, the rookie, and then he hurt his knee. So right now, it's basically Jerome Harrison is their lead running back, and Hardesty still has sleeper value. Some of the receivers have sleeper value, Massaquoi and Rubisky, but
don't touch Jake Delhomme.
Well, look, we're
just a few blocks away from the Carolina Panthers stadium,
from the scene of the crime. Yeah. I think it should be called, but. No, they're a depressing team, and definitely in that division, by far the least fantasy relevant.
Before we keep moving, the one stat I think is most my favorite stat, at least about the Browns, is Jerome Harrison. I wish I'd written this down, but it's something like if you take away his 5 longest runs, his stats just look horrific from last year. They're just he had some incredible long runs that kind of do distort what he did, and that's why Hardesty is getting so much attention this year. Moving on, another team with some quarterback issues, so to speak. I mean, I know Delhomme looked good in preseason, but it's preseason. Team we know is going to have quarterback issues, Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yes.
I mean, they're missing Ben Roethlisberger for at least the first 4 weeks of the season, possibly up to 6 weeks, although that's looking less and less likely. Where do you see them coming down as far as their fantasy options? We know Rashard Mendenhall is going to be taken, if not late first round, early second round in most drafts.
Yeah, I love him. I think he's going to be the whole offense the first 4 weeks.
Did you take him?
I didn't. I wanted. I was a pick away from getting him in the second round, which I was really excited about. But he got snagged a pick ahead of me. But some people look at it and say, well, he's going to get all the attention. Well, I always think that's kind of an odd argument because. People say that about Steven Jackson, the guy still produces. People say Maurice Jones-Drew still produces. If a guy's getting 30 touches a game, that's way more important than defense game planning around him. And I think Mendenhall's fantastic. He will be all year. The problem is, like you say, with the quarterback and whether it's Dixon, whether it's Leftwich, whoever it is, those receivers, specifically Mike Wallace, who everyone loves as a sleeper, lose value for at least the first 4 weeks.
Where would you recommend drafting Ben Roethlisberger? Because, especially in weekly leagues, not cumulative leagues, but weekly leagues, you're going to want to, he's got to be valuable in the last 3 quarters of the season.
Oh, I love him as a backup. That was kind of in the first mocks we did. I think both of them, I took him as a backup pretty high. And in this draft, just because of the way things fell, I didn't get that chance. But, I mean, they're a throwing team. People need to get that through their heads. They throw a lot. He's a great player. And he's going to put up numbers when he's in there.
So you don't think it's worth it to draft him as your number 1 quarterback and just tell yourself, you know what, first 4 weeks, that's when I'm playing my backup?
Yeah, I mean, you can do it that way, too. Like, you can take him first and then take Matt Ryan if you want and play Matt Ryan for 4 weeks or whoever, whoever it is, Chad Henne or whatever. But, yeah, I think I put it this way, from weeks 6 through 16, when he's playing, he's going to be a QB1.
So let's talk about the Baltimore Ravens now. Yeah. They're going through a lot of changes. Another team that I feel like, even though they've got Ray Rice in there, teams need to realize they throw the ball.
Exactly.
I mean, it's one of those things where Rice gets a lot of receptions. They have a reputation probably burnished in the days of way back when Priest Holmes was even there.
Well, Trent Dilfer.
Well, yes, Trent Dilfer.
That's why.
Don't forget Tony Banks. Never forget Tony Banks.
Never do.
But yeah, I mean, their reputation as being the defense first, grind it out on offense team, doesn't really hold that much anymore. I mean, Derek Mason, the best possession receiver in the game potentially, is back for yet another year, and he's one of those guys that I feel like, much like Hines Ward, has gotten to the point where he's boring, but he serves a purpose as your wide receiver 3 or something like that. And he's there, or even higher.
And like Ward, he's a guy we want to write off every year. I feel Donald Driver's in the same category. Any of these receivers who hit 32, 33, we just want to write them off, but they can still produce, and Mason, but obviously the big addition in Baltimore is Bolden. Mm-hmm. And that's why people are so optimistic about Flacco. They're optimistic about Bolden. They're optimistic about the whole offense. And while I mean, Bolden's great. Fantastic player, but it's just very funny to me how, for some reason, getting traded means he's not an injury risk now.
Yeah.
No. This guy's still a huge injury risk. He's hurt all the time, and getting traded to the most physical division in the NFL, where, I mean, the Steelers safeties, I mean, they take people out. I mean, that's their job, literally and figuratively.
I mean, the Bengals, who we're going to get to, they're like that too.
So look, I love Bolden as a player, but he's gonna give you a handful of game time decisions, which everyone hates, and he's gonna give you a couple DNPs. So keep that in mind when you're drafting any Raven.
Well, now we did mention the Bengals. They've got one of the, I guess, quotable pairs of wide receivers in the league, in Chad Ochocinco and Terrell Owens. But how do you feel that that's actually going to translate to on-field production?
I mean, I like it. I think they still have something left in the tank. Obviously not what they were. I mean, we know that. But
70 receptions each?
I mean, I think Ocho can do more than that. But it's just tough it is tough to predict. But the catalyst to it all is Carson Palmer. And he's the guy who did not look right last year. And that's what you're worried about. And now what's kind of funny is we were talking about how the Steelers and the Ravens have become passing teams. Bengals are a running team. Mm-hmm. Everyone thinks back to that 04, 05 when Palmer threw 42
when they had the late Chris Henry and they were actually they were throwing deep.
Yeah, I guess that was 06 or something. But either way, no, this is a running team now. Like Cedric Benson is, I think we have a workhorse index, another feature we have on the Fantasy Source site. He was number 2 in the league, the running back behind Steven Jackson. This team runs the ball.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where Palmer, I would think, one of our favorite things is that he's saying that he quietly did something. He's quietly become a mediocre quarterback for fantasy purposes.
Right, and that's the thing. I don't know. I don't think we can sit here and say whether or not he's actually regressed or it's just the offense and whatever. But either way, he's a backup fantasy QB. Those receivers are good. They can still be starters, but Cedric Benson's the number 1 guy there for sure.
Hey, Matt, thanks for talking about the AFC North with us.
It was a joy.